Hello everyone and welcome to another video, and what is another episode of running a game on a graphics card that costs less than the game itself. This is my 4GB AMD Radeon RX 570. It cost me £49. I thought I was getting the 8GB card for this price, but I got sent the 4GB card instead and thought, hey, it makes the challenge of running modern games even more, well, challenging. We previously tested Battlefield 6 and found that with a few hefty visual sacrifices, 60 FPS in multiplayer was not only achievable, but it felt pretty playable. Today, it's the turn of The Outer Worlds 2. Now, I really like the first game, so I'm looking forward to getting into this over the weekend, although I probably won't be using the 570 throughout my entire playthrough, if I'm honest. I've only seen the game at the lowest settings so far, but it looks alright and I love the art style. This is running on Unreal Engine 5, so the 570 may have its work cut out. It's a good start though, because the game actually starts, which isn't always a guarantee with modern games on certain older hardware. It took a couple of minutes for the game to optimise shaders, and we get a description of what is happening here too, which is interesting. After this, we're greeted with a main menu that's more like an in-game dialogue box, which is quite cool. I haven't played much of this, about an hour, but it's enough time to get an idea of performance, that's for sure. So let's start with the settings. I put everything at low, of course, or the respective lowest, with 1080p as a base resolution, at least to start with. We have a few upscaling options to choose from here. I started with none, which I thought would give us the best frame rate, and while 60 FPS is unfortunately out of the question with this one, 30 seemed easily achievable. We also have TAA, TSR, FSR4 and XeSS available to us with this graphics card. If you have an Nvidia card, I believe there's also DLSS. You may have noticed the hardware ray tracing toggle as well, which we can enable, but nothing changed, and this isn't an RT capable card anyway. Now, in terms of playing at native resolution, TAA will give us the most frames per second, more so than actually leaving the setting at none. I guess because it makes the image a bit softer, so it's less intensive. FSR4, TSR and XeSS native all put out less than 25 FPS, with Intel's XeSS being the worst. At least with this card, of course. We need all the help we can get, so I stuck with TAA for the initial gameplay test, considering it gave us the best frame rate at native res. I noticed a couple of missing textures right away, like hair here, but we're using a card that falls way under the minimum system requirements, and of course we have 4 gigs of VRAM, so yeah, I'm not too surprised. Hopefully half the map isn't missing when we get a little further along. Alright, so this is part of the opening level. With the lowest settings, which we won't be changing at all for obvious reasons, we're seeing over 30 frames per second with TAA enabled. The graphics card is maxed out usage wise, the VRAM is maxed out, and our CPU, the i5-12400F, is just sitting back and chilling at less than 50% utilisation most of the time. Along with the 6-core 12-thread i5, I'm using 32 gigs of 3200MHz DDR4 in dual channel. Nothing fancy here. The card is definitely the weakest part of this combination, and our processor can handle a much better GPU, as we've seen many times. The i5-12400F is one of my favourite processors of all time, to be honest, and I think it makes for a great start to an entry-level gaming PC, even in 2025. I didn't see many drops below 30 FPS here during both the indoor and outdoor segments, but I may be inclined to recommend a 30 FPS cap so that it feels a tad more consistent if you're using one of these cards and want to play the game. It's worth noting that we can also play this title in third person mode, and that does seem to impact performance a little more, maybe because more of our surroundings are being rendered. I do wonder how the 8GB 570 would compare here. Now, I don't think the extra VRAM of that card would help much, to be honest. I think we're more limited in terms of the card's actual capabilities these days. It is 8 years old, I believe now. Now let's move on a bit and see how a much more open environment impacts things. Okay, so We've definitely lost a few frames here, but we are still seeing about 30 FPS with a few drops below that this time around. It doesn't actually feel too bad, and it doesn't look completely horrible. The 570 is handling this Unreal Engine 5 title better than I anticipated, and I was actually expecting a few more frame drops and problems with the frame times. Now at this point you may be tempted to enable upscaling to try and improve performance, but just hold on a minute. Actually, no, I'll show you. From my earlier messing around with the options, I found that TSR will give us the best performance out of all the upscaling options when using the equivalent upscaling preset with each. For example, TSR performance will give us better performance than FSR performance or XeSS performance modes. The thing is, out here in the open, none of them actually help that much. I went straight in with TSR performance mode, which gave us maybe a few FPS more, but it didn't really help with the consistency, so we were seeing worse image quality with the same dips and drops as we were getting beforehand with native. I'm not sure if it's worth the trade-off. I think I'm just happy to accept 30 FPS here, a lot of the time anyway, with TAA. There are also some visual issues with the grass when upscaling was enabled, either the grass shadows flickering or texture problems. I'm not sure which it really falls under. You know how we saw with the NPC's hair earlier? A lot of black pixelated flickering, that sort of thing. Now this actually seemed to go after I turned upscaling off and then on again, at least with TSR here. I decided to start a fight with the whole town and all the wildlife in it for some reason, and I didn't last long, but during the gunfights and me covering long distances on foot when running away from said gunfights, the frame rate held up okay. Out of interest, I also decided to try FSR 4 with the ultra performance mode, which made the overall image quality worse again, yet just like with TSR performance mode, the FPS gains weren't really worth it, not in my opinion. The flickering grass texture issues were also pretty visible here. I'm not sure how well they show up on video, so you just have to take my word for it if you can't pick it up. It's up to you really if you think all this is worth the extra few frames per second. I guess it probably won't dip as much in intensive scenes as native resolution, but I'm going to just be grateful that the 570 hits 30 in the first place and stick with that, probably enabling an FPS cap from within Reaver Tuner. I couldn't see a resolution scale slider in the options like we saw in Battlefield 6 last week, so my next trick was dropping the resolution to 900p or 1600 by 900. It's been a while since I've used this. I enabled TAA here too. We were getting closer to 40 FPS now, and this feels quite a bit smoother overall. It's not too offensive on the eyeballs either. It is weird how the upscaling options don't really do anything in this game. I mean, I am playing it a few days before the full release. I have Game Pass and I thought I may as well get the premium add-on just for the sake of working on this video and potentially a few others, to be honest. I didn't get sent a key or anything, so this is not a promotional piece. Imagine if Xbox sent me a key and then I just did this to the visuals. Maybe that's why they don't send me a key. I can't really sit here and complain too much though. I'm using an ancient graphics card that cost me less than the standard edition of the game. If you have a 570 or something of similar performance, maybe a 1650 or 1650 Super, then 30 FPS at native 1080p or 35 to 40 FPS at 900p is doable here. At least it has been during my testing of this really early section of the game. You'll have to let me know how it's running for you down below in the comments, especially if you have lower end or entry level hardware. Performance could also be subject to change over time, but I'll probably add this to my selection of games that I benchmark regularly, so we'll get an idea of how it runs on various hardware over the course of the next few months. As always, thank you for watching, and hopefully I'll see all of you in the next one.